I can't remember the exact wording, but the tone of it was asking the council to explore how best to acknowledge that history.
So the street name itself wasn't asked explicitly to be changed?
There was no request for it to be changed, no.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Thank you. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to agenda item number 6, and it's going to be Chris again, future approaches to community engagement. I think you all have it on your pack, page 7 to 15.
Yeah, I've shared it on the Zoom, which people at home can see, if not necessarily here, but hopefully you get the gist. So we've been looking at how we do our engagement, and I'm referring specifically here to our corporate team. So it's not reflecting on a lot of work that goes on within service teams and departments where they're engaging with specific audiences, their service users, for example, or mechanisms like this where there's a structure already in place, and our voluntary sector partnerships that we value so much. But we've been reviewing what we're doing. We had to change a lot of what we did during lockdown for obvious reasons. We couldn't put people in halls and complete my book on 101 things to do with post-it notes. So we had to adapt and learn how to work digitally. We've also thought it was time to review our community forums. They've been running in more or less the same format for a decade now. So it was overdue a look at those, and we ask for feedback from people who attend the forums and those who didn't earlier in 2022. We had then a sort of looked at what other boroughs were doing, looked at what best practice was going on elsewhere, looked at what we could borrow from and learn from. And at the same time, there's a bit that Amanda and the policy team have been working on around our approach to how we work with communities, and we wanted to incorporate that and make sure that what we were doing reflected that work. So there are 3 main areas we want to make significant changes in, and then change our capacity in order to meet that. The first is around our face-to-face engagement, and I'll go into detail about what we're going to do there. The second bit is engaging with what we call civic society. So I think, and again, I'll go into a bit more detail about that, but that means those less formal groups, resident associations, but also, as we learned through COVID, the WhatsApp groups that just cover a street or a small community, and our digital offer, how we engage residents digitally. So on our face-to-face side, the community forums, which we've been running for a long time, seem to have found a sweet spot, which is both too big and too small. So they are too big to be able to address the kind of needs and wants of people who want to talk about their very specific local community. We currently organise them around our 5 town centres, and for many they don't feel particular connection with that. So for example, over in Mitcham, if I organise a meeting in Cricket Green, no one from Pollard's Hill comes, and if I organise a meeting in Pollard's Hill, no one from Cricket Green comes. They don't see themselves as part of that same collective and would want to do things differently. And equally, they're too small in terms of attracting an audience. The turnout varies by area, but it's not great, and we think we can do things that will improve that. So what we're looking to do is still deliver 2 events in each area a year, but reformat them to be quite different. So one, we're looking at a higher profile question time style event where we'll have local decision makers, leader of council, NHS, police, other public services, where the residents can turn up and ask them questions and hold them to account. I make quite a big thing of those. The other will be more of a kind of citizens assembly type approach, where we'll be able to get residents together, and instead of the current format where it's presenter talking followed by questions, get residents around tables talking to each other and coming up with their own solutions and their own thoughts that we can then feed into the council. Alongside that, we'll look at how we can support local activity. In many parts of the borough, there's already really good work going on in those local communities, and quite frankly, they're doing a better job than we can. So we want to get out of the way and support them and give them a conduit into the council. So we'll be looking at how we can build different arrangements in different parts of the boroughs, borough rather than have a one-size-fits-all as we do currently. So related to that is how we work with our community groups, our civic society. So these are not the sort of charitable sector or voluntary sector. These are the resident associations, friends of groups, WhatsApp groups. So they range from very large formal structures, Merton Park across the road, for example, Collier's Wood, Rains Park West Barnes, through to very small street-based activity. So a core part of this will be mapping that, understanding what those groups are doing, who's involved. Is it one person and their issues, or is it a genuine community activity? We'll be able to offer them a designated contact, so they'll have a conduit into the council to be able to be signposted to where they can get answers to the questions. We want to build a bespoke e-newsletter to those groups as well, so we can get messages out that are relevant to them around events or consultations or other activities that are going on. And at the moment, I think a lot of them feel they're working in isolation. They work in their patch, but don't necessarily know what's going on across the borough. So we want to try and bring them together for an annual event where they can get together, learn from each other, and talk to the council as well. And the third bit is our digital offer. So currently we have a consultation hub. It's the address I gave out under the last agenda item. And with that is a survey tool that allows us to build online surveys. That goes some way, and we use it a lot, but there's a lot more tools out there that are become available as digital platforms are improved, and we got to try some of those during lockdown, so we want to build on that experience and introduce a few more. So some of the things we'll be looking at is a mapping type function where we can ask people to engage with space, as it were, and tell us a pin on a map what they feel about that particular location, what those issues are. We also want to have build a dialogue function. So historically, those kind of discussion boards or chat forums were quite tricky for local authorities. They could be quite resource intensive. You have to moderate everything that's going out and then analyze everything to get a clear picture of it. But now, as technology has improved, you can get versions with AI functions attached that do a lot of that work for you, do that analysis for you, bring out those key themes. So we'll explore that option as well. And the third bit is a residents panel. So currently, for the last couple of decades, we've been doing either annual or a biannual big survey where we will interview 1,000 residents usually at home on their doorstep. What those survey usually tells us is a snapshot, and often they raise more questions and answers because we can't go into the level of detail in the kind of 10-12 minutes we've got for that interview, because we're trying to cover so much. So what we're looking at is an online panel where we can get that sample of 1,000 residents, talk to them regularly, go into more detail on topics. So we may do a whole survey on climate emergency, another one on town centres, another one on whatever those issues of the day are. So it'll allow us to be more flexible, be more responsive to colleagues in the building who need to engage residents and get a dialogue going, and be quite a powerful tool compared to what we're able to do currently. But to achieve all of that, we're going to need a bigger team. Currently, with 1.5 staff in the corporate consultation team. So we're looking to extend that with a new events manager who will look after those big events and question time things and citizens assembly type approaches, as well as support things like the cost of living events that are going on at the moment. We'll also look to recruit a community development officer whose primary role will be that relationship with civic society, being the support for those groups and the conduit for those groups, take on that work. And then a half post for the engagement officer post. I have a half post as it is, so create a full-time post, and that post between those two people between them will look after our digital hub and our sort of business as usual activity around the consultations. And we can do 150, 200 consultations in a year as an organisation, so it can be quite a high volume of activity. And I imagine I'll be doing all of this as well. So for those who do go to community forums, you won't miss me entirely. I'm sure I'll still be going to a lot of those meetings. So where we are at the moment, we've been through overview and scrutiny, and they had a look. Obviously, we've got here tonight, so we're going to community forum meetings over this round. We'll be looking to start the recruitment and procurement process imminently, and then a final decision going to Cabinet in June, with a view to having a new structure in place for the autumn. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris. I think what you've just said, the review of the community forum is welcome, I'm sure, by most of our communities, especially in this eastern side of the borough, because there was a lot of confusion in terms of when these meetings are held and where people should go. So I think this has been well overdue for many years. So the review will obviously change the way and the structure in which the community forum is held, and I think it will be really good for our communities to get engaged in what is happening in Merton. And, I really like what, I've seen in the presentation, and I do hope that it will work with our communities. So if we have anyone who would like to put a question to you, I will take questions now. Thank you.
Okay.
It appears that there's no one online who wants to put. You don't? No?
Oh, yes, we've got a couple of.
Right. Councillor Joan Henry, would you like to start off?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, what would like to find out? I noticed you said there will be event manager, so you'll be advertising. How will it be advertised, internal or external, please?
I think the initial plan is to try internally and see if we have any success that way, and if not, we'll go external.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next person on the list is Grace. Grace, would you like to put your question to Chris? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great presentation. Mine is a very small question. You said that you put on a few of these events over the last 2 years where not very good turnout to these meetings. You've not had a very good take up. How do you promote it? How do the local community find out about these meetings?
So with community forums, we've generally used our communication channels. So we feature them in My Merton, in the e-newsletter that we've been putting out over the last couple of years. We certainly noticed through lockdown there was a drop in numbers when we were remote only and just using Zoom. Numbers have picked up slightly in some parts of the borough as we've gone back to meeting in person. I send out posters to GP surgeries and halls and everywhere I can persuade to put up a poster. And we use social media as much as we can. We've had some recent cases of some of the councillors being willing to put leaflets through doors, and that's been really helpful. We've had that both in Mitcham and in Morden. So we use whatever tools we can, but within quite a constrained budget. So I'm not able to do overly creative stuff. It's within a fairly small framework.
So my follow-up question to that is basically when the local MP wants to contact, she sends an email out to all the residents. So do you have a format somehow, a way that you send emails out to all your local constituents of that area? Because I've never received anything. So, I mean, I don't go to the library very often, and I very rarely go to the GP. So how do you actually, is there a more fluid way of actually reaching your local residents? That's just food for thought. I'll leave that with you.
Please on that. Right, Councillor Springer.
I was just going to come in on Grace's very, very fair point. So yeah, we have thought carefully about advertising it, but you talked about the local MP, so I assume you're referring to Siobhan McDonough. So the people she emails are the people who've given her their email, and they're happy to be contacted by them. So Merton Council does now have a really good and extensive email newsletter, but the problem is back to the what Chris was saying right at the beginning. We couldn't use that full council-wide email newsletter to advertise an event in North East Mitcham, because that would be irrelevant to those in Rains Park and vice versa. So what we're trying to get out here with these better digital platforms and these better engagement with residents groups is exactly that, Grace, to be able to get to the people for whom this is a local issue. So no, I completely agree.
Thank you, Councillor Singer. Anybody else online? I think taking everything into consideration, it's time for change, and I think it's a good change, and the presentation seems to be good. And I'm sure in the autumn, when it kicks out, everybody will be very happy, and it will be more advertised, and people will know where they are. Thank you so much, Chris, for your presentation. We now move on to agenda item number 7, Civic Pride grant funding. Amanda Roberts, are you online?
I am, and I'm just sharing a presentation. I also have my colleague Heather Begg joining me, who was having some technical difficulties, but I think hopefully we've resolved those now. So I'll just share the presentation quickly. Bear with me 1 second.
Can I just confirm that people hear me? Hello, I'm Heather.
Yes, we can, Heather.
Lovely, thank you.
And also, if people can refer to page 16 to 26 with the presentation.
Right. Sorry, everyone. Bear with me 1 sec. Can you view the presentation, or is it not showing up?
You can see it already.
You can. Is it showing us? Sorry, I'm just right. Okay, that's better. Sorry, we'll get started now. I'm a bit rusty with sharing on Zoom. Apologies. So thank you very much, Chair and colleagues, for having us here this evening. This is an update following our last presentation to the JCC back in October. And just to introduce ourselves, so my name is Amanda Roberts. I'm the Policy, Strategy and Partnerships Officer in Octavia's team within the council, and I'm also one of 3 commissioning officers on this call for the Supporting the Voluntary and Community Sector programme. So Chris is actually another commissioning officer for the programme, but I'll hand over now to Heather to introduce herself as well.
Hello, I'm Heather Begg. I'm a commissioner in adult social care. So in a different department to Amanda, but we work very closely in partnership with this programme and other projects.
Thank you, Heather. Right, I'm just going to recap very briefly for those who may not have attended the last meeting on the aim of the fund. So under the new umbrella of the new Civic Pride Fund sit 2 distinct funding programmes. So that's one of the 2 is the Supporting the Voluntary and Community Sector Fund, which we're here to give the update on this evening. And the separate fund is around investing in neighbourhoods, which was also launched at the end of last year. So the Supporting the Voluntary Sector and Community Sector programme was previously named the Strategic Partner Programme, which some of you may be familiar with. It has 3 key aims. The first of those is investing in and supporting Merton's local voluntary and community sector infrastructure. The second is around nurturing a strong sense of community and reducing inequalities. And thirdly, it's around bringing together preventative services that provide information, advice and support within the borough. The grants programme was open to voluntary and community sector organisations to bid for, and this included new and previously or currently funded services. So it's just a quick recap. As part of the process, we set up a collaborative working group following a sort of large engagement event we held last April. This working group had a range of membership from the voluntary and community sector and also our statutory partners, and it was independently chaired by the Chief Executive of Community Action Sutton. And so the grants prospectus for the fund was co-produced with this working group. And as part of the work, undertaken for the group, they actually specifically asked for additional support sessions to take place, which were targeted at small volunteer and community-led organisations. And also that kind of builds on recent reports, the State of the Sector report and the BAME impact report, which also both indicated that smaller organisations can struggle to compete with the larger organisations when applying for funding. So as a result of that feedback, we commissioned Merton Connected to offer online support, webinars and one-to-one bid surgeries. And in addition, the council also offered more general one-to-one application surgeries for any groups applying to the fund. So we had 4 key themes for this new fund, and these align with Merton Council's new Working Better with Communities framework, which Chris briefly mentioned earlier. That was agreed by Cabinet as well in January. These 4 key themes are very much focused around areas where people may find help and support in Merton, and organisations were able to apply for funding against one or more of those themes. Right, I will hand over now to Heather to provide an update on the funding.
Thanks, Amanda. So at almost 5 million, this combined grant programme is the largest contribution to support the voluntary and community sector in Merton for many years. With 18 organisations being funded for 3 years, this is the largest amount of organisations funded via grants. The grants allocation also represents an increase of 35% more funding than the previous strategic partner programme. The funding was very oversubscribed in some areas, and as you can imagine, some very difficult decisions have had to be made. We were actually able to negotiate with some of the larger groups to withdraw their applications, which opened up funding to smaller groups and new groups. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Out of the 18 organisations, 3 organisations haven't received this funding previously. So this provides both stability within the sector and opportunities to explore new projects. 28% of the total funding available is going to smaller groups and organisations. Over 1 million is going to organisations that support older people. Over 500,000 to organisations that support people with disabilities and impairments, and 203,962 to BAME Voice, a significant increase on the amount of funding they have previously received. Also, just like to add that Consultative Community Development Trust and the Association of Polish Families, I think Slavik's on the call, have also seen a large increase in their grants. This recognises the important work that they have done with the council, both during the COVID pandemic and more recently on the cost of living crisis. So I just want to go through some of the organisations now that have been successful with funding. So I'm going to start off and then hand back over to Amanda. So for theme 1, services that provide help, we have Power Church Centre and Commonside Community Development Trust have received funding for that, and direct help to support adults in need. We have a project starting with Merton Vision. Back over to you, Amanda. Oh, is Amanda?
Sorry, I'm on mute. Okay, I won't list all of the organisations, otherwise we'll be here for a long time. But I just wanted to say, under the growing strengths and capabilities theme, the focus was on telephone, digital, face-to-face information advice, accredited advice, casework, and specialist and legal representation. So obviously the funded organisations reflects those priority areas. Okay, back over to you, Heather.
And in terms of theme 3, this is around supporting active, supportive communities. So preventative group activities in the community for adults 18 plus in need. And as you can see, there's a lot of priority groups covered within some of that support.
Thank you, Heather. And finally, just covering theme 3 and 4. So theme 3 is around, again, active supportive communities, but that was our Health Watch Merton service that Chris is directly commissioning. That was is funded by Merton Connected. And then for an enabling system in place, theme 4, this is around supporting voluntary and community sector infrastructure in the borough. So the 2 funded organisations under this theme are BAME Voice and also Merton Connected. Okay.
Thanks, Amanda. And as we've just mentioned, and as with many grant programs, we were oversubscribed. So just wanted to talk a little bit about the support that we're providing to organisations that didn't receive funding. So for all organisations that didn't receive funding, we provided a rationale as to why they didn't receive that. Some applications didn't meet the specified criteria within the prospectus we developed with the collaborative working group. Some bids didn't quite provide the level of detail required or evidence how they would reach those priority groups or prevent, reduce and delay the needs as part of a preventative agenda. So all organisations were offered one-to-one feedback sessions, and I'm pleased to say a lot of organisations have taken that up, and we're still in the process of talking to some of those organisations as well. We've also used the feedback sessions as an opportunity to receive feedback on the process. This is really important to myself and Amanda. And we've got some really good feedback from having those chats as well. For example, a few people have said that the application form was too long and parts were a little complicated. So we've incorporated this into the evaluation of the process to make sure we make improvements for the next time. Merton Connected has also been offering organisations further support with exploring alternative funding opportunities and help with bid writing. Must be noted that some of the organisations that applied were quite new and may not have been as experienced at writing funding applications. We're also working closely with the organisations that had been receiving strategic partner funding for the past 4 years, who will no longer receive funding as part of the Civic Pride Fund. And in addition, we did mention that some larger organisations, after having conversations with us, kindly withdrew their applications, and we're having conversations with them again to support with alternative options.
Thank you very much, Heather. Just including our contact details at the end, please feel free to get in touch if you've got any further feedback. And as sort of just to recap, the funding and services will start this April. We're currently busy working through the funding agreements with our new partner organisations. So thanks very much, and any questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Amanda and Heather, for the excellent Merton Civic Pride Fund supporting voluntary and community sector 2023-26. The document is quite precise and self-explanatory. Also, I would like to thank the cabinet member, Councillor Ellie Stringer, because it looks as if it's not a very easy job to do, because it's quite extensive, and I'm very proud that this council is supporting our voluntary organizations in terms of the work they have done. I'll now take questions from anyone online or anybody present here today.
Grace?
Start off with Grace. Would you like to put your questions to the Heather and Amanda, please?
Thank you so much. Hello, ladies. Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Indeed, I'm one of the organisations that actually didn't meet the criteria. So hopefully I'll be able to tap into your one-to-one at some point. But my question is, at the very beginning, you mentioned that there were 24 successful applications from only 18 organisations. So my question is, did some get too strong? They qualified for more than once and were successful on more than one occasion. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, would you like me to give you an example?
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
so for example, Merton Vision. I mentioned that they're providing direct support to people who've particularly been affected by the pandemic. You can imagine people with a visual impairment were really affected. So they applied and were successful for a grant there. But they've also been successful in preventative activities where they're providing social activities for people within the Guardian Centre and across the borough as well, working in partnership with some other organisations. So they were very different projects, but yes, they both met the criteria.
Thank you. That makes sense.
Councillor Bukhari.
I just want to know about if there's going to be any assessment on the organisations that have been successful and the demographics that they reach out to.
Absolutely. So if I make a start, and Amanda, if you want to pitch in, so both myself and Amanda, we don't just commission this grants programme, we also monitor it as well. And most organisations will either have a monitoring meeting, a formal monitoring meeting, either quarterly or 6 months. We normally take a risk-based approach to that, and there'll be monitoring reports on outputs and outcomes. That's what we're very busy doing at the moment, just agreeing what those are going to look like. We'll also want to evidence impact. One of the key things for us as well is looking, as you say, about the demographics and making sure that these organisations are reaching target audiences. So yes, they may be supporting a particular priority group, but we'd be looking at actually how they're meeting the needs of the local population in terms of the demographics of that population as well. Also, there will be some projects where we'll be looking at borough-wide reach as well. So they may be located in a particular area, but we'll make sure that they're having that reach, but also tackling inequalities and adhering to the East Merton model. Just making sure. So all of that was in our application process, and as part of the monitoring, we'll be checking back to make sure that what they said they're doing in the grant agreement that is actually being delivered.
If there is an assessment that finds that there are certain groups, minority groups, or any demographic group that is missing, or that has missed out on an opportunity of getting funding, will you be able to tackle that, and will you be able to address that?
I think what we would look at is the existing grant arrangements and looking at whether they can support if there are gaps. But the other thing as well, because as I said, myself and Amanda work really closely together. And we work with other commissioners within the local authority and the ICB and the Mental Health Trust as well, and other partners. So actually these are things that we have regular conversations about. And one of the things that we also do is we have a community response steering group where we meet with many of our voluntary sector partners on a monthly basis. And we welcome challenge as well. So actually, if people say, do you know what, we really don't think that maybe we're meeting this particular demographic or this particular community, we do something about that. Whether that is potentially saying, well, actually, let's do some targeted material in maybe a translated language. So, we take steps. Amanda, is there anything else you want to say on that?
No, that was very comprehensive, Heather. Just to add as well, obviously we undertook quite an extensive equality impact assessment, both as part of the design of the process, but also at the decision point. So that was, you know, we did look at the equalities, you know, the sort of target groups as part of that work as well. So just to add that. But no,
Okay.
thank you, Heather. That was
Thank you.
yeah.
Can I take yours, please, Councillor?
Thank you very much. Actually, my question was going to be indeed about how we were going to audit the outcomes of the allocated fund. That information, once those audits and monitoring has been carried out, will that be available for the relevant scrutiny panels to have a look at when at the appropriate time?
Okay, could you take Councillor McLean's question? Did you hear that? Hello?
Yes, I mean, that is something that we can certainly look at. I think we'd need to just check the process for that, but certainly, you know, we can discuss that further about how we can share the information and, you know, provide progress updates for scrutiny.
We'll follow up with our scrutiny team who I sit with as well. So thank you, will do.
You want to come in now on Philip? Want to say something, Philip?
Thank you, Chair. So if I can just add to that, the other thing we're looking at the moment is how we make sure that we continue to comply with the public sector equality duty, and that includes publishing information about the reach of services and the extent to which services are reaching across our communities. So we will be putting more information on our website in coming months that very specifically relates to that. So it will be publicly accessible information. And if scrutiny panels want to do some more detailed work on that, we'd welcome that. So,
any further questions online? I think there's no more questions, but I would like again to express my sincere thanks, because this is a great big job which has been done, and I'm very proud, you know, as a councillor in Merton, that we are supporting our voluntary and community sector. And thanks to both Heather and also Amanda and the cabinet member, you know, Ellie Stringer. This is very good for the board to be doing this, and we're very grateful for all the hard work which has been put into this document, because it's not a very easy job. And I'm sorry for the organizations which did not receive any funding. Perhaps we could look at them at another time to see what we can do, especially Grace. We know, you know, that you do a very good job, you know, in your organization, but that will be looked at a further date. Thank you so much. We now move on to agenda item number 8, Wimbledon Guild Small Grants Program, Vanessa Robinson and Helen Duckworth. Are you online?
Yes, I am. It's actually, I'm just Helen. I'm the head of community services at Wimbledon Guild. And I just want to start off by saying that although our name is Wimbledon Guild, and probably quite a lot of you have heard about us, we actually provide services across the borough of Merton, and only in Merton. We're a single borough voluntary organisation in working in Merton. I'm gonna, as Heather said, I haven't shared on Zoom for a long time, so I'm hoping I can do that. Can you see that?
We got the presentation on page 28 to 42. Thank you.
Right. So I just thought, so I'm here to talk about the grants programme, which Wimbledon Guild is managing and has always managed. In fact, since we were founded in 1907, we have given out hardship grants to people living in Merton. And I just thought to start off, I would just quickly talk for a moment about the aims of the Guild, which, as it says on this slide, the services aim to reduce social isolation and loneliness, help people who are experiencing difficulties, and enable older people to be active and healthy. And one of the things that we do in order to deliver on those aims is that we give out a programme of hardship grants, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. This slide, the second slide, is about, it just very quickly recaps on the large range of other services that the Guild also provides. And apologies, some of you have probably heard us talking about this before, but I thought it just provides a bit of context to our work. So we provide wellbeing support to help people stay living independently, especially older people. We provide befriending services for, well, during the pandemic, it was about 150 to 200 people, which is befriending is provided via volunteers. And they are not just, it's not just for older people, we do provide it for younger people as well. We've got a large activity program in Wimbledon and in Mitcham, and especially exercise classes for over 50s. We've really switched to providing a lot of exercise since the pandemic to try and respond to the needs of people who are stuck at home for so long. Though we do also run a program of social groups as well. We've got a community cafe, which is at our base in Wimbledon, and we work on the community hub with Age UK, which provides signposting to the voluntary sector, and that was set up and is funded by the council, and it was set up to provide signposting during COVID. As I've mentioned, and I will come back onto in a moment, we provide a big programme of hardship grants for people who live in the London Borough of Merton. Whoops. We have got a service to provide where we work in partnership with Citizens Advice, and they come to our base for 2 days a week to give general advice and debt advice. Some of you may know about our Talking Therapies department, which provides low-cost, subsidised one-to-one and group therapy and free emotional support groups. That is a really unusual service. To find low-cost therapy is quite unusual, and especially our one-to-one therapy can last for up to 60 weeks, which is very unusual to find such long-term therapy. And then we also provide one-to-one grief support after bereavement, and we've got a bereavement group as well. So the Guild is providing a lot of different services, all to people who live in Merton. So I'm just going to come on now to our hardship grants, which is what I've been asked to talk about today. And the reason that we're particularly keen to promote our hardship grants at the moment is that as I said earlier, the Guild has always given out hardship grants, and in recent years, pre-COVID, we were giving out every year between about £50,000 and £70,000 a year. Since COVID, the amount that we've been giving out every year to people who apply to us in financial hardship has increased, because the council has asked us to allocate money on behalf of the council. So in COVID, we were, and well, actually, even before COVID, we're giving out some winter warm grants, specifically to help people stay warm in winter. Some COVID recovery grants during COVID. And now the council has allocated to the Wimbledon Guild a large amount of money, up to £200,000, to be allocating to help people with the cost of living. So we really, without plastering it all over bus stops, because we will be inundated with far too many applications if we do that, we are really trying to promote our grants at the moment. And so you were a really great group of people who could talk in your communities, talk to your constituents about the grants and make referrals. So we give out small grants, which are for household items that people can't afford, things that are essential to well-being. The average grant amount is around £460 at the moment per household. And but actually, we often give out a lot more than that. Recently, thanks to the contribution from the council, some people have received up to £1,000 to help them with items, often fridge, broken washing machine, beds. Recently, we bought a triple bunk for a woman who was escaping domestic violence. We purchase things like school, or we'll give people money to buy school uniforms, all sorts of really wide range of very personalised things. That it's what we really drill down into what actually will help the person or the household. We also give out cash grants, and that is a small cash grant to help people bridge a gap in an emergency. And the amounts for the cash grants is usually less than £100. It says they're £40 for a single person. It's actually usually a bit more than that at the moment. And the application for that is very, very straightforward. People need to provide a bank statement showing that they haven't got a lot of money in their account and proof of a Merton address. And then we have got a cardless automatic transaction, which is called Cash Perks, so that it doesn't need to run through people's bank accounts if they're in an overdraft. The money can be paid in a cardless way, and people have it as cash. We also do, at the moment, we're helping people to pay energy bills as well, and water rate bills as well. And the application for the small grants and the bill payments is via the form, a bank statement, and for the bills, evidence that the bill needs paying. The application forms are on our website. So since April last year, we've we've given out £118,000 to 450 local households, but we do want to spend as much of the money that has been allocated by the council as we possibly can in the current year. The other thing just to say is that the assessments, as I said, we really try to drill down with people into what they actually need and what is really going to help. But we also, it's a very holistic approach in that if people have got debts or are worried about other financial issues, we do work really, really closely with their partners in Citizens Advice to help people get appointments with the Citizens Advisors to, especially around debt. And we really sort of nurture people who can be really quite frightened to go and get debt advice. And we're really helping them to make them see that, that it's going to be helpful rather than terribly frightening. So that I won't go through this, but in these slides, which can be circulated, there is detail about how to apply for grants via Wimbledon Guild. And the other thing, just it says at the bottom of this slide, is that we've also got a scheme for Ukrainian arrivals as well, which again has been funded through the council. And the applications for that are via Slavic and the Association for Polish Families, PFA. The other thing I just wanted to quickly mention is, I did mention at the beginning, is that we have got a Warm and Well programme, which is to help people stay warm during the winter and to try and prevent excess winter deaths and hospital admissions in Merton. And we've got a Warm and Well officer based at Wimbledon Guild. We work closely in partnership with Thinking Works, the organisation that are experts in energy saving and energy programmes. And the programme is to help people receive advice, but we also trying to maximise people's income and access energy support payments to help people stay warm. So we are, through this programme, we're giving out fuel vouchers to people as well as free home energy checks and referrals to the Merton handy person, who is another key person in this programme. It's a very strong partnership programme, that one. So that's, I just wanted to mention that as well as something that can provide financial support for individuals as well. And then the last slide is the contacts at Wimbledon Guild. So that's I just whizzed through. That's my presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Helen, and also Vanessa, for the presentation. It's excellent news, you know, for all the services. Thank you for all the services which you provide, and I'm sure we'll have people online who would like to ask questions. Councillor Agatha Akijina, you want to start off?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Helen, for your presentation. I just want to know about the payment of the bill. What's the criteria? Because you don't want to send people there for them to be drilled when they're in such dire strait. What's the criteria? What's the assessment for them to actually get the money, get their bills paid? And all the other sort of funding you're giving. What is the
criteria is there's information about the criteria on the Wimbledon Guild website. There's a whole page, but broadly, people need to show a bank statement that shows that they are in financial need and live in Merton. And that's it, really. There aren't loads of criteria.
Sorry, when you say financial need, what do you mean? Does it mean that they owe the money, or
no, they won't necessarily. Well,
I could send somebody there and they'd be told, no, you're not in financial need. So, you know, if I'm passing messages on, I need to know what I'm telling people. I don't want anybody to come for no reason.
Well, we look at income and we look at expenditure, and usually the incomings and outgoings, people have to put that down on the application form. And usually what we find is that people's outgoings are above their income, and that's how you are evidencing that you are in financial need.
Okay. But it's not just
the
looking,
best thing to do, if you've got somebody that you want to apply and you think that you know, you don't want to waste their time, is to give up the staff a call to discuss the case before you submit, if you feel that I mean, the form isn't very onerous, but if people feel that, you know, they're not sure if they might meet the criteria, then please do ring us. The team are very, very approachable and extremely helpful to everybody. Our aim is to try and help people who are in financial need.
Thank you. Thank you about the profit and loss account, because basically I can tell them you have to put your profit and loss, whether your earning, your outgoing is more than, then they know whether they can, you know, somebody can pay the bill.
You'll see on the form.
Yeah. So
you'll
that's
see the form.
Any other questions?
There's an assessment. So yeah, thank you.
Yes, it is an assessment.
Okay, thank you so much once again for your presentation.
Councillor Henry.
Oh, Councillor Joan Henry, apparently you've just come on.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Alan, and thank you for all the support that you've been offering. I know the Wimbledon Guild has been doing quite a lot. But what I want to find out is where the financial support is concerned, how long do you financially support a person for?
We generally provide a one-off grant, so it's usually once during a year. That's historically been the way that we work, and we have had people who come back, you know, every year saying, I need something else. However, at the moment, we are the team is being a bit more flexible about that, and so there are some people who have come back within a year with a different need, and where we've taken a look at everything, as I said, you know, tried to be sensible and holistic about things. And so sometimes people have had more than one grant in a year at the moment, but generally people just receive one grant per year. And that's why I'm often seeing the applications, and quite often you'll see that somebody's applied for £300. The staff have, say, for example, for a specific thing, the staff have drilled down and said to the people, actually, there are other things that you need. And we have paid out, made a larger grant than has actually been applied for, because we're trying to see, you know, what is really going to make a difference to the family.
Right, thank you.
Else online? No, there's Sorry, I'd just like to say something, then I'll ask Keith to say something as well. As chair of the JCC, I would like to place on record my sincere thanks to Everett Willis, who had worked in the council for over 13 years, and she has served the JCC for most of those years. I've known her all those times as well. Thank you for her excellent service and also her contributions to the volunteer organization. We really appreciate it and thank her for all her hard work. And I'll now call on Keith to say
Can I just say,
something.
Madam Chair, I would like to second that.
Thank you, Chair, and I would just start by adding our thanks to Everett as well, and just to say how much we're missing her already. But the other thing I just wanted to mention very briefly, so that committee members are aware, is that we're hoping, or we're intending, to develop a new equality, diversity and inclusion strategy for the borough. I think this was mentioned at the last meeting in December. And we're planning on taking a draft of that strategy to Cabinet in June, prior to going out to formal consultation with a range of organisations. The next meeting of this committee is on the 13th of June, or scheduled to be on the 13th of June, which is the week before the June Cabinet meeting. So we're looking at options around how we can make sure, because what we want to do is make sure that this meeting has an opportunity to focus very much on the draft strategy. So it's possible that we will either do it as a pre-decision scrutiny type approach and bring it on the 13th of June, or we may move the meeting back 2 or 3 weeks, or stick with the 13th of June and add in a special meeting probably in July, to focus specifically on the draft strategy. So I just wanted to flag that we'll be in touch in the near future about those arrangements. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else have any other business? No. No. Thank you all so much for coming to the meeting, and for those online. And I would like to thank all the officers, also Octavia, tonight for your first meeting. Thank you so much for all the help you've given, and have a safe journey home for those who are here. Bye-bye.